How could I have known that a slightly open door would open something far more dangerous inside me? I thought I was the adult in control, but that moment, it changed everything. Stick around until the end. This story only gets more intense from here. If you enjoy stories that blur the lines between right and wrong, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Have you ever walked into a room at the wrong time and instantly felt your whole world shift? My name is Rachel, and I swear, if I had turned away just 1 second earlier, none of this would have happened. It was a regular Tuesday afternoon. My husband, Grant, was at work. The house was quiet except for the occasional hum from the fridge and birds outside the window. I just made myself a cup of coffee when I noticed the faintest noise coming from upstairs. Nothing strange, just the kind of muffled sound you barely register. My stepson, Noah, had come back from grad school for the summer. He was 23, respectful, kept to himself mostly. I thought maybe he was on a call or watching a movie. Still, part of me thought maybe I should bring him a coffee too, check in, just be a little friendly. As I walked upstairs, I noticed something odd. The door to his room was slightly open. Something about that made me pause. I could have called out, could have knocked, could have turned around, but I didn't. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity, maybe instinct. And that's when everything changed. From where I stood, the angle let me see his screen before I saw him fully. The glow from his laptop lit up his face, his hands busy, his expression focused. At first, I didn't process it, but then it hit me. Hard. Noah was not watching a movie. I froze. Blood drained from my face. I should have shut the door and walked away. Instead, I just stood there, staring. He looked up, realized I was there. Panic flushed his face deep red. He scrambled, slammed the laptop shut, stammered something I couldn't hear. But it didn't matter. That moment had already happened. "Mrs. Rachel, I'm sorry," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. I backed away quickly, heart pounding. "I should have knocked," I blurted out, not even sure why. It wasn't like I caught him doing something illegal, but it felt like I had witnessed something I wasn't meant to. Something too personal. I escaped to the hallway, pressed my palms to my cheeks, tried to calm my breathing. What the hell just happened? He was an adult. I was twice his age. And still, something about that moment stirred something I didn't expect. Confusion, embarrassment, and something darker. I thought that would be the end of it. We wouldn't talk about it. Things would go back to normal. But they didn't. At dinner, we didn't speak. We couldn't. Grant sat with us, talking about his job, completely unaware of the tension between me and Noah. Our silence had weight. It wasn't anger. It wasn't awkwardness. It was something else. Unspoken. Electric. 2 days passed. Then Noah sat beside me in the living room. He didn't say much at first, just glanced at the TV, fidgeting. "I'm sorry about the other day," he finally said. "That's not how I wanted you to see me." I smiled weakly. "We've all had embarrassing moments. Don't worry about it." He chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, I guess we're even now." I paused. "Even?" For a second, he hesitated. Then, as if he couldn't hold it in anymore, he said it. "I've seen you too. The way you looked at me, I've looked at you the same way." It was like lightning struck. "What?" I whispered. "I didn't mean to, but I did. It was my secret, until now." He looked away, but the damage was done. The air between us shifted completely. The room felt smaller, hotter. The boundary between us, whatever had kept things polite and proper, just vanished. And that's when I knew something had already started. Something neither of us would be able to stop. After that conversation in the living room, everything changed. Without a single touch, without a single wrong move, we had already crossed a line we couldn't uncross. The days that followed were filled with this strange, quiet tension. Grant still had no idea, of course. He left early, came home late, and barely noticed how stiff things were between me and Noah. But I noticed. I noticed everything. We didn't talk about what Noah said that day, not directly. But our eyes started to linger a little longer. We started to accidentally end up in the same room, watching TV, grabbing snacks, laughing too long at things that weren't really funny. One night, Grant had gone to bed early. I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, heart racing for no good reason. Except, I knew there was a reason, I just didn't want to admit it. I got out of bed and paced the hallway for a bit. Maybe a glass of water would help. But instead of heading downstairs, my feet stopped outside Noah's door. The hallway light cast a soft glow through the crack. The door wasn't shut all the way. Again. And again. I should have walked away. I didn't. I pushed it open just enough to peek inside. He was asleep, or at least I thought he was. The blankets were half off his body, his chest rising and falling with each breath. And then I saw something that made my breath catch. I didn't mean to look, but I did. And the second I realized what I was staring at, my whole body tensed. I should have closed the door and walked away, quietly, like it never happened. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, for just a few seconds, just long enough to feel something I didn't want to admit. Then I turned, went back to my room, and lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what the hell was happening to me. The next day, I told myself it had to stop. I'd crossed a line in my mind, and that was dangerous enough. I needed to put boundaries back in place. I needed to remember who I was. But life doesn't pause just because you need it to. That night, Grant had a late meeting. I was in the kitchen doing dishes when I heard the front door swing open, loudly. It was Noah, drunk. He stumbled in, knocked into a table, laughed softly to himself. "Noah," I whispered sharply, stepping out to meet him. His eyes found mine, glassy and unfocused. "Rachel, are you real?" he slurred with a little smile. I rushed to him. "Shh, Grant's asleep upstairs. You need to quiet down." He smiled at me, slow and lazy, his eyes roaming over my face like he was seeing me for the first time. "You're really beautiful," he said. "Have you always been this beautiful? Or did I just never let myself notice?" I swallowed hard. "You need coffee. Come on." I led him into the kitchen, sat him down, made a fresh cup. But his gaze was heavy, warm, almost tender, and I hated how much I felt it. He fumbled the mug and spilled a bit, murmured an apology, and chuckled. "You were always this sweet?" he asked, voice low and thick with liquor. I forced a laugh. "Okay, that's enough for tonight." But then I realized I couldn't leave him like this. He was in no shape to head up on his own. And if he made too much noise, Grant might wake up. So I helped him up the stairs. When we got to his room, I handed him clean clothes, ready to step out while he changed. But he struggled, fumbling with the buttons of his shirt. "Need help?" I asked, instantly regretting it. He nodded slowly, his eyes on mine. My fingers shook slightly as I unbuttoned his shirt. Each button felt like a mile. When I reached the last one, I looked up and found him staring at me. His breathing had slowed, so had mine. "Rachel," he whispered, "I'm not playing this game anymore." I froze. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely audible. His eyes searched mine. "You feel it too. I know you do." I took a step back, but I didn't run. "This isn't right, Noah." He didn't flinch. We crossed the line the moment we stopped pretending. He stepped closer, so close I could feel the warmth of his skin. Then he reached up and touched my cheek, gently, like I might break. I should have stopped him, but I didn't. That night in Noah's room felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Too far to go back, too dangerous to jump. But somehow, I had already taken a step forward. His hand was still resting on my cheek. Software warm, too familiar. I looked into his eyes, expecting to see confusion, maybe guilt. But there was none of that. Just clarity. Like he had already made peace with what he was doing. Like he knew exactly where this would lead. I swallowed hard. "Noah, you've had too much to drink. You don't mean this." He leaned in just enough for me to feel his breath. "I haven't meant anything more." I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because deep down, I was scared he was right. And then it happened. His lips touched mine. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't aggressive. It was slow, certain. Like he'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. And I let it happen. My brain screamed at me to stop, to pull away, to remember who I was and everything I stood to lose. But my body didn't move. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear anything else. When we finally pulled apart, the room was still. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full. Of questions, of danger, of things we couldn't unsay and couldn't undo. I should go, I whispered. But my feet didn't move. Noah reached for my hand. Don't. Please. I looked at our hands, then up at his face. This isn't a game, Noah. This could destroy everything. I know, he said softly. But it already started, Rachel. Pretending it didn't won't stop it. I didn't sleep at all that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to pretend it was just a dream. But the taste of his kiss still lingered on my lips. The heat of his touch still burned on my skin. The next morning, I avoided him. I couldn't face him. Couldn't face myself. I went through the motions, made breakfast, folded laundry, acted like everything was fine. Grant noticed nothing. He kissed my cheek, grabbed his briefcase, and headed out the door like he always did. But when Noah came down the stairs, our eyes met, just for a second. And that second said everything. He knew I hadn't forgotten. He hadn't either. We kept our distance over the next few days. Barely spoke, barely looked at each other. But the distance didn't help. If anything, it made the tension worse. Every time he walked by me, I felt my body tense. Every time he laughed at something on TV, I felt something twist inside me. It wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just chemistry. It was something else, a pull. And then came the night it all exploded. Grant had gone out for a work dinner. I was in the den, organizing some photo albums, old memories, a different life. And then I heard the door open. It was Noah, but this time, he wasn't drunk. He stood in the doorway, silent. I looked up. Everything okay? He nodded slowly, walked in, and sat down across from me. I can't stop thinking about it. I set the photo album aside. Noah, I'm not asking for anything from you, he interrupted gently, but I can't pretend. I know you feel it too. I shook my head. This is dangerous. So is lying, he said. And I'm tired of pretending. Are you? I didn't answer right away. My throat tightened. My hands trembled. But deep inside, I knew the truth. I'm terrified, I finally admitted. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. You don't have to be, he whispered. Not with me. After that night in the den, something between us shifted permanently. We didn't talk about it again. Not directly. But everything we did from then on spoke louder than words ever could. We started spending time together. Too much time. At first, it was small things. Noah offering to help with dinner, me asking if he wanted to join for a movie. Completely innocent on the surface. But we both knew it wasn't. We sat closer on the couch than we used to. Our arms would brush. Our laughter would last a little longer. And sometimes I'd catch him looking at me like he was memorizing my face. Once I dropped a dish towel on the floor, and when I bent to grab it, I felt him watching me. I stood up quickly, my face flushed, trying to act like I didn't notice. But I did. We both noticed everything. One night, we were watching a movie together. Grant was working late again. The lights were low, the volume quiet. I don't even remember what we were watching. I just remember the moment Noah reached for the remote, and his hand rested on my knee for a second too long. Neither of us moved. I looked at him, he looked at me, and then he slowly leaned in, just enough for me to feel his breath on my skin. I turned away quickly. Noah, we can't. I know, he said, voice low, but I don't want to pretend anymore. I stood up, trying to shake the heat from my face. We said we weren't going to do this. That night in your room, it was a mistake. He nodded. Then why are you still thinking about it? I didn't answer. Because he was right. The worst part? I couldn't even say I was confused anymore. I wasn't. I knew exactly what I was doing. I just didn't know how to stop. Then came the night I'll never forget. Grant had left early that morning for a weekend conference. 2 days. Just me and Noah in the house. That evening, I had trouble sleeping again. Restlessness ran through my body like static. I tried reading, but every sentence blurred. I tried calming myself with tea, but it did nothing. And then I heard something. A soft knock. I froze. The door creaked open slightly. Noah stood there, barefoot, in a plain gray t-shirt and pajama pants. His hair was messy, like he'd been tossing and turning too. "Rachel," he said, just above a whisper. "Can we talk?" I nodded, my throat dry. "Yeah, sure." He stepped in, closed the door behind him gently, and sat on the edge of my bed. We didn't speak for a moment, just silence and breathing. "I'm trying to respect you," he said, eyes staring at the floor. "I really am. But I can't stop thinking about you, about that night, about all of it." I sat up straighter, pulling the blanket tighter around me. "Noah, this isn't fair. To me, to Grant, to you." He looked up. "I know, but none of this feels wrong. Not when I'm with you." I swallowed hard. "Noah, this can't go any further. We've already gone too far." He stood up slowly, walking toward the door like he was about to leave. But then he paused. "Okay," he said, "but just so you know, you're not the only one who's scared. I'm terrified too. But I'd still choose you." He left the room. I sat there, heart pounding, hands shaking under the covers. For a long time, I stared at the door. And that's when I realized I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep this under control. The next few days felt like walking a tightrope, pretending everything was normal while my insides were in knots. Grant came back from his conference full of stories and energy. He didn't notice how stiff I had become, how I couldn't meet his eyes for too long, or how I flinched when he touched my arm. He chalked it up to stress. "You've been doing too much," he said with a smile. "Let me take care of things for a while." But it wasn't the chores that were wearing me down. It was the secret sitting between the walls of our home like a time bomb. I kept my distance from Noah. No movie nights, no casual chats. We didn't even eat in the same room anymore. I thought that if I just ignored it long enough, it would fade. I could convince myself nothing had really happened, that the kiss, the touches, the looks were all a blur of bad judgment. But late one Friday night, the house reminded me that secrets don't disappear. They wait. Grant had gone to bed early. He was exhausted from the week. I stayed up to finish a few things in the kitchen. Around midnight, I heard the door downstairs open. Noah. He stumbled in, clearly drunk. I rushed to him, whispering, "Are you serious right now? You can't come in like this. You'll wake Grant." He looked at me with a sloppy grin. "He's not gonna wake up. You know how deep he sleeps." His words slurred. His balance was off, but his eyes, they were locked onto me. "You look really good tonight," he said, almost like he was confessing a sin. "Too good." "Noah," I snapped, trying to stay calm. "You need water and sleep. Not this." I tried to lead him toward the kitchen, but he stopped walking. "Rachel, I don't know how much longer I can pretend like I don't feel what I feel." His voice wasn't loud, but it was filled with something raw, honest, dangerous. "I told you," I whispered harshly. "This can't happen." He looked at me for a long second. "Then why are you shaking?" I didn't answer. I just kept pulling him toward the stairs. "Come on," I hissed. "I'll get you upstairs before Grant hears." But Grant wouldn't have heard even if we'd shouted. He was fast asleep, 2 rooms away, completely unaware that I was sneaking his stepson up the stairs like a guilty secret. In Noah's room, I tried to help him get changed, but he could barely lift his arms. He laughed as I fumbled with the buttons of his shirt, and for a second, things felt stupidly normal until they weren't. He grabbed my wrist. Not hard, not aggressive, just still. Our eyes locked. "You feel this too, Rachel," he said quietly. I didn't pull away. My chest rose and fell with uneven breath. "Please, just go to sleep." But I didn't leave. I sat on the edge of the bed, unsure why I hadn't bolted out of the room the moment I tucked him in. I told myself I was making sure he didn't choke in his sleep, that I just needed a minute. Then he whispered, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd met differently? If you weren't married?" My stomach turned, because I had thought about that more than once. He reached for my hand, and this time I didn't stop him. His thumb traced slow circles against my skin. And that touch, it undid me. "I don't know what's wrong with me," I whispered. "Nothing," he replied. "The only wrong thing is that we keep pretending." I looked at the door, then at him, and for a split second, I almost gave in again. Until a sound. Footsteps. Not from his room. From the hallway. I shot up, my heart racing. Noah sobered instantly, sitting upright. We both stared at the door. The knob didn't turn. No one entered. But someone had walked by. And we both knew it. Had Grant heard something? Was he awake? We didn't say a word. I just backed away, slipped out of the room, and closed the door behind me without another glance. I tiptoed back to the bedroom and slid under the covers, heart pounding in my throat. Grant stirred in his sleep and murmured something incoherent. I froze. Then he turned over, still asleep. But for the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid of what was happening between me and Noah. I was terrified of what would happen when it finally got exposed. After that night, after hearing those footsteps outside Noah's door, I knew the line we'd been dancing on was about to snap. For days, I waited for something to happen, for Grant to ask a strange question, for a subtle change in his tone, for the weight of suspicion to fall over everything. But it didn't. Life went on. Breakfast, work, dinner, small talk. But the air was tight, like we were living in a house full of matches, just waiting for someone to strike a spark. Noah and I stopped speaking completely. We didn't look at each other, didn't cross paths, didn't even breathe the same air if we could avoid it. But every second of silence was louder than any argument, because we both knew we were holding back something that could destroy everything. And then came the moment I'll never forget. It was a Saturday afternoon. Grant had gone to the store. I was folding laundry in the guest room when I heard soft footsteps behind me. Noah. I turned, surprised and tense. We hadn't been alone since that night. "I need to say something," he said quietly. I stood still, hands frozen over a towel. "I can't do this anymore, Rachel," he continued. "I can't keep walking around this house like we're strangers. Like what happened didn't mean something." My chest tightened. "We don't have a choice." He took a step forward. "Yes, we do. We always have." "Noah," I began, but he cut me off. "Look, I know this sounds insane, and maybe it is. But I don't regret what happened. Not 1 second of it." I looked at him. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with something real. And that was the hardest part, because I didn't regret it either. That night, that kiss, that look, I had replayed every moment 100 times. Not with guilt, with longing. I sat down on the bed, hands in my lap, unsure what to say. I thought I could go back to how things were, I admitted. But I can't. Noah sat beside me. "So what now?" he asked. I shook my head slowly. "I don't know, but I can't hurt Grant. No matter what's happened between us, I made a promise. And that still means something." He nodded. "I understand. I just needed to hear it." We sat in silence for a while. No anger, no begging. Just two people realizing that what they wanted wasn't the same as what they could have. And maybe that was enough. Later that evening, Noah came downstairs with a packed bag. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when he walked in. "I'm going to stay with my mom for a bit," he said, keeping his voice steady. I turned, drying my hands. "Are you sure?" He smiled gently. "Yeah, I think it's best. For all of us." I nodded, holding back whatever emotion was trying to push its way out. We didn't hug. We didn't say goodbye. We just shared one last look. And that look said it all. "Thank you. I'm sorry. We can't." That night, I told Grant that Noah needed a break. some space, time to figure things out. He bought it, no questions asked. And just like that, it was over. But here's the truth. It never really left me. Not the tension, not the memory, not the ache. We never told anyone. No one ever found out. But some stories don't need an audience. Some mistakes don't come with punishment. Sometimes, the worst consequences are the ones you carry quietly for the rest of your life. And I carry it every day. Not as regret, but as a reminder of just how thin the line is between ordinary and irreversible. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to this story. Let us know in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Rachel's shoes? If you found this story intense or thought-provoking, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more gripping real-life narratives.